we talk a lot about this explosion of data in geospatial. And the odd thing is, as a community, very often we talk about the explosion of data as a problem, not as a benefit. But one of the things we really want to talk about today is open data as a foundation for sort of thinking about this explosion of data. The thing that we would like to talk about is how open data, more than just being a free open license data set, can actually be sort of a structural element. So, Erik, let me start with you. You run maps at Meta. Talk a little bit about what maps, what role they play in Meta, and sort of how you're looking at open data and sort of the data explosion.
Yeah, for us, it's like we've been collaborating in the open for many years in various open projects. And we just need a really good map that works across our various product surfaces. And Overture is now, since about a year ago, the basis for all of our maps at Meta. And basically, we use Overture as the base. We conflate a bunch of first-party data sources. We have a lot of data internally, and then a bunch of external sources, and that's how we build maps.
So Uber is the ultimate location-based business, and Maps is at the center of Maps product and map technology at the center of our products. When you get in your app, it's search, it's display, it's navigation, it's routing, and it's ETAs. And to enable our users to go anywhere, get anything at a push of a button, we need to feed our algorithms high quality data that is also aware of the real time, aware of the world in the real time. Because of that, we have to integrate hundreds of different data sources, whether it's POIs, whether it's base maps, whether it's transit schedules, whether it's EV information, whether it's ticketing systems, map data, and the way we think about the world is at the center of it.
Why is a data provider working on open data? How did TomTom look at that?
Yeah, it primarily driven by our customers, but also surprisingly reduced our effort in building a map as well. Overture provides is a foundation, so stuff that we no longer believe is commoditized and no longer key differentiator, things like the centerline road geometry, buildings, places of interest. These are serves as the base on Overture, and then we attach all our content to that data. So it provides a significant impact for them at a much lower cost, and that's proven to be highly valuable. For us as well, though, surprisingly, it's also provided a way for us to communicate with third parties and bring in extra data to enhance our data offerings, and so we reduce costs there as well. So that ecosystem is proving to be a huge advantage, huge advantage.
Amy, I'm going to go and ask you to put your National Geospatial Advisory Committee. You work a lot with, especially in the US, with national spatial data infrastructure. We're talking about things that affect people in tech, but there's an analogy to this in the public sector and the things that national mapping agencies are dealing with. And maybe you could kind of provide the translation layer there between sort of what tech is seeing, both from a bringing apps together and then also collecting data. How do you see those sort of being parallel?
Yeah, I would say the scope of the problem is very similar. Everybody's dealing with the same problem of conflation. With certainly in the public sector, you're now not only dealing with the problem of bringing all these different data sets together, but they're very much siloed. And there are reasons for doing that. There may be policy reasons, there may be any kind of reason for doing that, but it creates these other data silos. And one of the bigger challenges in the public sector is that this data is being used for decision making that guides policy, that spends money, that is used to address crisis situations. And so when you're trying to put this data together very quickly, when you're trying to make it highly interoperable, it's not just about the conflation aspect of it, but it's discoverability and it's trust. Public sector has to show their work. And so you need to be able to handle the problem of bringing things together very quickly, making sure you can discover that data and know where it is to do that, and also that it's good quality data.
So let's switch tacks and talk a little bit about the approach. And Amy, I'm going to ask you to talk a little bit. One of the things we said is that Overture has a sort of a structured approach to it. Our goal is not to make all data open. We've talked a little bit about stable identifiers. Kind of give us an overview of how we see data working in this way.
Yeah, so the model really starts with the reference map, and Marc talked about the 6 different themes that we put out, and that's really to represent your baseline entities and really, you know, the geometry and the most basic information about those that would identify those as unique features. So a building, its geometry, and maybe a couple of attributes. But the point of that really is to work together, collaborate on a commoditized map. And then on top of that reference map, have a persistent, unique global identifier system. The idea is really to use that reference map, use these IDs to link much richer data, proprietary data, you know, any kind of private data. When we bring those together, the one thing that we're doing is assigning them all the same ID. So the same building in every one of those layers will have the same ID. And what that does is, even if that doesn't end up in an Overture release, now you're starting to explicitly link data and reference the same feature with the same identifier, meaning everybody can speak the same language about the data. And that's really important. So that's kind of the way that we view the model, is have the baseline reference map and use those unique identifiers, which we provide traceability for, to link richer detail, to link different types of data sets, whether those are open or whether those are not.
There's an explosion of data, but there's a finite number that's probably something around 20 of data themes, and those data themes all have a certain level of basic information, foundational information. And so, and all the explosion of data pretty much maps onto those foundational themes. So that was kind of one of the aha moments. We're building 5 themes. There are probably another 15 out there, but that would be sort of an explosion or an expansion, right?
Yeah, I'll just give you the example of how TomTom uses it. So we take the centerline road geometry as a theme from Overture, and we take that stable ID set, and then we put all of our proprietary information available to sell to our customers or for our services. Things like one-ways, turn restrictions, all of our traffic, real-time traffic data, speed restrictions, all of that stuff is proprietary information that TomTom curates from all of our live signals that we're getting from the sensors out on the road and in the mobile devices. And so we build it all on top of that. And then because other people are building on top of that same road network, the conflation cost is just an ID join.
That's one of the big things. That was actually one of the questions, is what does that look like from a data provider? I'd go to Jan, Erik, and Dimitri from an app builder, or in this case, in the public case, it would be someone pulling in data to provide applications to citizens maybe. What does that look like? How does that sort of affect your thinking about how you do that?
Yeah, I'll start. Oh. Okay, from our side, it's like I mentioned, we combine lots of different data sources, and so the stable IDs are key, right? Companies like Meta building products that are in each country, Uber, same thing. We need that reference system to be global, right? We can't use individual countries or individual regions reference systems. So that's where I think the value of Overture and the stable IDs come in for us. We can take these data sets from all over the world and just easily add them to our map.
To add to what Jan Erik said, it would allow us, so resolving the layering and sort of finding the common ground when it comes to reference and data would allow us to focus our resources. And I think it's the same for data providers, focus the resources on differentiation.
Every organization pretty much has their own ID system. The idea is how do we link all those together so that there is a way to translate between those, both up and down in scale, very easily, very quickly.
So how do you manage the quality of the base layers? How do you think about quality on that?
If anybody who uses data needs to be able to trust that data. And the trust starts with things like knowing the provenance of the data, knowing what kind of processing was done on it, knowing what kind of validation checks were done, if any, having quality metrics that are reported out with it. You can't have trust without openness. And openness is, again, going back to having a transparent way to not just put these data sets together, not just create an open reference map, but to be able to show our work and say, here's the way that we measured quality, here's the metrics that we got, here's the validation tests that we ran, here are the issues we found. All of that goes back to making sure that when you're using data and the data is open, that gives you that much more confidence, as long as it's an actual open and transparent process, to use that data in ways that you might not have thought open data could be used for.
So for us, it's our business, lives or dies on the fact of whether we have a safe base set of data to work against. You can imagine if major road network outages occur, we have a huge number of vehicles on the road that are heavily impacted, and it puts TomTom in a very difficult position. I'm sure the same would be true clearly for Uber and Meta. They would have huge outages that occur. So we had to investigate that thoroughly, and what ultimately it's the provenance of the data. If it's clearly open and anybody can change the data, it goes through a much more rigorous quarantining and validation process than if it's coming from a trusted source that goes through still validation, but maybe not the same level of quarantining. But then on the flip side as well is some things do slip through. But when you have multiple large players utilizing that same data set, as soon as our metrics and our KPIs flag some change that occurred in our network with using data, it gets immediately addressed, flagged, taken to and addressed. And so with multiple companies using that in a commercial setting, we're seeing that those issues that do even slip through get flagged and addressed very quickly.
One of the things that I think was mentioned yesterday was building maps has gone from a survey process to a sensor process. So 10, 20 years ago, maps were built by survey. The best maps were built by the companies with the highest number of surveyors. Increasingly, the best maps are corrected by feedback from sensors, like you were saying. So therefore, it leads that the best maps are the ones that have the most endpoints that are collecting and feeding data, assuming that data is being worked on.
Right, we talk about a proactive correction of error in the map versus reactive, and so you use this real-time sensor information to be able to flag errors that are occurring in your data and proactively fix it before it's recognized or reported by your customers.
Double click into what Mike said about diversity of use cases. It's not only, different companies and different use cases at different areas of geographic focus. Some care more about downtown areas, some care about highways and in-car experiences versus mobile experiences versus web experiences. So having a diverse set of the perspectives and quality metrics eventually will compound into better data.
That I think we can't do a panel without talking about public-private partnerships. And I've been sitting here listening, thinking, is Overture a public-private partnership? Is it something different? Is it a different type of public-private partnership? I don't know how important it is to put a label on it, but how would you describe?
Overture is a form of a public-private partnership, with Overture as part of the broader Linux Foundation, kind of acting as the neutral broker to bring different organizations together, understand what the win-win is. What do each of these organizations need to get out of this collaboration to make it successful? So it is a better form of a public-private partnership where you're bringing together everybody's, hopefully, best interests, and out of that comes out something that's bigger than anybody could have done by themselves and done together in a way that's more sustainable. And so, yeah, I think it's kind of the best case scenario.
How would one get engaged? How would you describe sort of different ways from maybe low engagement to high engagement in what Overture is doing?
Yeah, I would say start with a conversation. And going back to the question of public sector, we need more public sector voices. And so if you have any interest whatsoever, come talk to me, come talk to Marc, anybody really on this panel, and just ask questions. I think the next step, more engagement, is to find alignment in some of the things that we're doing, or like Marc said, are there other organizations that you know of that could align together with you on charting new territory for what we're doing in Overture?
What's really unique is, as Erik mentioned, there ends up being a subcommittee or a collective group with a similar challenge that ultimately come together, and they've been working together, and they almost self-organize in the beginning. It officially gets recognized, and then standardization and that base capability starts getting generated from it, and it's super powerful. So every one of you, if you're dealing with geospatial, has a voice that should be being heard. You guys should be getting involved. You should at least be learning, and then you should be figuring out what you could do and how you could do it for your area.
What if, say, a national mapping agency has data? They have open data or maybe not open data. How should they think about Overture?
I think you should think about Overture as being what somebody recently referred to as a shop window. You can get your data out to more users. And that doesn't mean that you won't be doing the same things internally with your data that you always have been, but it's another mechanism for distribution, for visibility, and for interoperability, being able to use it with other types of information.
Thank you very much, and thank the panelists, please.